If you had asked me about the GOP in 2013, I would have said that they're dead. I would have said that the GOP will meld into the Libertarian Party and that the parties were in the midst of a paradigm shift. I would have told you that social liberalism has taken root in this country as a whole, irrespective of race, class, or gender. I would have told you that Obama's progressive social policies were irresistible. I would have told you that the focus on social issues was a thing of the past, and that now the focus would be on more serious issues related to economics and foreign policy. I didn't know that I would be so wrong. 3 years later, things have changed. We have seen the disintegration of the two-party system and the frustration with establishment politics. The only problem is the orange elephant in the room, President-elect Donald Trump, a man with no experience in politics and who represents some of the worst aspects of America. So, how did we get here? The establishment. As I indicated in a previous video, being an establishment archetype was one of Hillary Clinton's failings. The role of money in politics is a huge problem for today's political system. The Clintons are too entrenched in pandering to donors to do anything for people, and many are aware of it. These legitimate grievances that should have been realized by the DNC and the Democratic base at large have largely been ignored. Unfortunately, the frustration with 8 years of Obama, especially his re-election, and what many conservatives saw as a changing country, elicited a stronger impetus to reform the GOP in a way that took establishment politics into consideration. Now, does Trump pass the test on not being an establishment ploy? Well, what about his cabinet and his officials? Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani is being considered in Trump's cabinet as Secretary of State. Giuliani is a man whose associated law firms have been paid over $560,000 by Make America No. 1, a pro-Trump super PAC. These firms were also receiving funds and donations well past the RNC convention. The biggest hypocrisy is that Trump just hired Reince Priebus, the quote, face of the establishment, as one news source puts it, as the White House Chief of Staff. A piece by Eric Lipton in the New York Times remarks on the fact that corporate consultants and lobbyists now comprise Trump's transition team. This team includes former Verizon and telecommunications consultant Jeffrey Eisenach, who is helping to pick staff at the FCC, lobbyist Michael Catanzaro, whose clients include Devon Energy, which challenged Obama's EPA regulations, and other corporate lobbyists. Where is the outrage among Trump's voter base? It's non-existent. An anti-establishment campaign does not translate to an anti-establishment presidency. Identity politics. I will first say that I am a black man that has his disagreements with Black Lives Matter. Police brutality is a real problem for blacks, Latinos, and poor whites. Police reform is something that is absolutely necessary. My support for police reform is not tantamount to support for the disruption of Bernie Sanders' speech in Seattle or the halting of a gay pride parade. Identity politics does get annoying when those who support it insists that everyone must speak for the group identity. It's a dangerous form of groupthink that leaves no room for dissent. Now, how do Trump supporters fare on this? Well, the conservatives who don't support Trump are branded as cuckolded conservatives, cuckservatives, or simply cucks for short. And this neologism has struck throughout his campaign. Trump also caters to a sort of white identity politics that sees America shifting. The hypocrisy is that this white identity politics has been elevated to debase the identity politics of marginalized groups. Intra-party identity politics is played to debase those conservatives who dislike Trump as cucks. Political correctness. This is a very legitimate grievance, but it's also the biggest point of hypocrisy among the right. Political correctness often goes too far on college campuses and social media. Halloween costumes at Yale, a post-election cry-in at my alma mater, and the outrage at Ellen DeGeneres' photoshopped picture of Usain Bolt. Despite the ludicrous incidents mentioned above, and many more like them, one must remember that the first microaggression didn't come from a college campus. It came from the offense taken at people saying Happy Holidays as opposed to Merry Christmas. However, this point of political correctness is how many liberals were conned into joining the right, or more specifically, the alt-right. They have been sold a phony notion of political correctness that includes basic correctness. On the internet, this has taken the form of people destroying, rightfully, social justice warriors and feminists, in my opinion. Political correctness, however, has been redefined to mean basic empathy and humanity. My outrage to Trump's comments about how he grabs women by the pussy without their consent is not political correctness. It's just basic correctness. The irony is that the right has embraced the same postmodernism it purported to rightfully despise. The alt-right, at least, has come to see things in terms of politically correct versus politically incorrect rather than in terms of correct versus incorrect. The importance of dialogue. In an essay I wrote, I outlined the importance of free speech and open discussion. This message cannot be articulated enough, especially in the political atmosphere that is to come and is arguably already here. A video featuring Jonathan Pye, a satirical news character played by Tom Walker, has been circulating around on social media. He articulates the importance of free speech regardless of the gravity of the issue being discussed. Many of the best psephologists, people who study elections from a statistical perspective, had their polls disproved. This rather anomalous election result is due to what is being called the silent Trump vote. The silent Trump voter is one who has effectively been cowed into silence due to fear of the social backlash that would likely come from admitting to such a vote. This silent vote really speaks to the sad state of free speech among us millennials. Dialogue is the key to changing people's mind, and shutting down the conversations regarding something so significant is a terrible mistake. Now, here is the point of hypocrisy. When the conversation is shut down from the other side, in this case the Trump supporter or someone like her. However, this time the conversation isn't shut down with shrill charges of racism and sexism, but rather charges of political correctness, as outlined above, and white guilt or virtue signaling, which are still valid terms, by the way. There is a balance between the two, but sometimes that balance goes unseen on both sides. However, the important thing in regards to the maintenance of conversation is to avoid the ascription of motives to one's interlocutors. People genuinely believe they are right, and it is patently arrogant to assume that your views are so normative that any deviation from them must carry an ulterior motive. A millennial move from Trumpism. In this past week, there has been a spike in hate crimes across the board. As depressing as this may sound, I believe that we millennials can and will defy the attitudes expressed by Trumpist rhetoric. The electoral map shown is that of what will hopefully be the future. Progress is not linear, as history will tell you, which is why we cannot rest on our laurels and we cannot normalize Trump. We must keep rattling the cages. It will be a hard 4 years, but it will be a 4 years that will be weathered with courage, self-reflection, and continued conversation. Thanks for watching.